How to help your child reduce how often they tantrum when you cannot help them in the moment. My name's Jodie Thornton, and there are a bucket load of reasons why we might be in a situation where when our child is actually tantruming, we just cannot help. So it might be that they're tantruming so often that you are still so drained from the last tantrum, you have nothing left to give. It might be that your child is also not sleeping very well, or maybe you have a younger child who is not sleeping very well, and so you just have nothing left when it comes to their intense tantrums. There are so many other reasons why the moment that your child tantrums might be a time where you just cannot get into a place where you can provide full attunement and empathy. And I want to talk about how we would work through this, because one of the things that's really important to me is that all parents know that there is always another way to reach the same parenting goal. Always. We do not have to force ourselves to do things. And also, if there's a strategy that doesn't work for us, that we can find a different way. We don't have to just accept that this problem just can't be resolved. So when it comes to tantrums, if we assume that you can't respond in the moment, if it's possible for you to stay with your child without becoming reactive, I'd like you to do that. So being able to stay with your child does help with them feeling like their emotions are not a problem, and also that they're safe. So if it's possible for you to stay in the same room as them and even to stay close to them, please do that. If it's not possible for you, I don't want you to, it will be worse if you force yourself to do it and then you become reactive and then add to their dysregulation in the moment. So if that's just where you're at, I want you to just accept that that's okay, that, you didn't get to this place of not being able to stay calm and stay with them for no reason. There's definitely a reason that you're in this situation, and we want to accept that this is just where we're at and we can do something else about it. So either way, what I want you to start doing is focusing on your child's emotional awareness when they're not yet overwhelmed. What we want to do is, if we look at what happens with a tantrum, right? If our child has a feeling that comes up and they know what that feeling means to them, they know why they feel that way, and then they can do something about addressing the underlying need, then the feeling dissipates. If they don't know how to handle that feeling, then the feeling becomes like an unprocessed feeling, and it starts filling up their emotional bucket. And I really have to come up with a different analogy, because there's that feelings bucket book, which I don't recommend, which is also a side note, but also it's like the opposite. It's like a full bucket is a good bucket, but in my analogy, a full bucket is overwhelmed. So I need to come up with a different analogy. But anyway, so if your child has unprocessed feelings and they're filling up the bucket, once they get to the point where their bucket is overflowing, that's when they're going to tantrum. What we want to be able to do is start processing the feelings before they're big. So if you are not able to respond with empathy and hold space for them in the moment of the overwhelm, we want to double down on dealing with the feelings before they get big. So the very first thing we want to do is start drawing your child's attention to how the physical the physical sensations they get when the feelings come up. So the ones that are the most common is like eyebrows close together, clenched jaw, shoulders hunched up, clenched fists, a different physical stance. So maybe they'll get into like they're trying to make their body a bigger thing. It's like a fight response, right? Anything at all that you can see that happens when your child has a feeling that's uncomfortable for them, we're going to draw your child's attention to that, because what we want to do is get them to the point where they can feel the feeling when it's a whisper, and then get your help to resolve it. So that's our first job, is get that physical awareness. The reason I'm saying let's focus on physical awareness is that it's so much easier for children, and actually adults as well, it's so much easier for people to pay attention to what's going on in their body than it is to what's going on in their emotional state. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's a function of having a society that's based on repressing feelings. So I'm not entirely sure, if we were in a society where everybody was comfortable with their feelings, that it would be easier for them to recognize their feelings. But what I know is that that's the culture we're in, and so that's what we're dealing with. So looking for that physical sensation. So you can do that in a couple of ways. One is when you notice it, you can say, oh, I can see your fists are really tight. Is something happening? right? And so asking them questions. You can also talk to them after the tantrum is over. Hey, did you notice something happen in your body before you got really upset? Looking for those ways to bring attention to what's going on in their physical body. The second thing we want to do is start working on articulating not just the feeling, but also the need. So for the feeling, if we think about things like sad, angry, frustrated, any kind of feeling that gets across that they're uncomfortable, but we want to tie that to the underlying need. So for example, a child who's wanting choice a child who's appears as though they need it to be their way. It could be that they're needing autonomy, so they're needing to feel like they have some power and control over the decisions in their lives, right? It could, but a child who's demanding things to be their way could also be a child that feels like they're unheard, right? They're feeling like their perspective is not being taken into account. So we want to be careful of just assuming what things look like on the surface versus what's underneath. We want to look for those ties to, like, what is that underlying need? And you can get that in a bunch of ways. You can ask them in various ways, like, why is this important to you? What would you like to have happen? These kinds of things. You can also start to look at the patterns for yourself. Most people will have like a few key needs that are coming up consistently at one time. And those needs will either be the ones that are most important to them as a person, or they may be the needs that they currently just don't have a reliable way to get that need met consistently, and so that's coming up most often. So if you look at the patterns in your child's behavior, you may be able to spot what is the underlying need. Another example of a need that's often mischaracterized. So there's a lot of people these days talking about how attention-seeking behavior is actually connection-seeking behavior. And maybe it is, but sometimes it's not. Like sometimes what we call attention-seeking or connection-seeking is actually something else. And the reason it looks like connection-seeking behavior is because connection is a great way to soothe ourselves when we're not getting what we need. Being connected, particularly to a parent, when we're not getting what we need, helps us to cope. But that doesn't mean it's the root need. It's a coping mechanism. And by all means, do not take away the connection that your child needs to cope and get through these difficulties. But what we really want to do is look at what's underneath of that. So quite often what people think is connection is actually something else, you know. So we're drawing attention to the physical sensations, being able to help them to learn how to articulate not just the feeling, but what is the need underneath of that. And then what we want to focus on is finding ways that your child can consistently get those common needs met in a variety of circumstances. So when everybody's tired, we can still get their need for fun met. When everybody is distracted, we can still get those needs met. When we're having a busy day, when we're having a quiet day, when there's change happening, we want to get to a place where we have a variety of ways that your child can get each of their like most frequent needs met, so that we're not risking more tantrums when the usual ways we get those needs met don't work. So if they're usually getting their physical activity at the park, well, on a rainy day, what are we doing? Are we rugging up in wet weather gear and going anyways? Or are we finding it's a great kids video series, and I cannot remember the name of it, but there's a great kids video series on YouTube that it's effectively like an aerobics class, right? But he has like a green screen, and he'll have like animations in the background, and he basically tells you, you have to jump to the side, or you have to climb really fast, or give all these action words that the kids follow along with. But it's basically, if you turn the sound off and watch what the kids are doing, they're basically just doing an aerobics class, right? So that's a way that we can get the physical need met when we can't get to the park on that day. So we're looking for those ways to have multiple options for the common needs that are coming up, so as we are meeting the needs proactively before they get overwhelmed. Then the last thing we want to do, if it's hard for you to be able to respond in the moment, is being really skilled at talking to your child about what happened during the tantrum after they've calmed down. So being able to have the conversation where you can help them to identify what they were feeling and needing, and talk to them about how, you're not being able to help in that moment was about your feelings, not theirs, or your time pressure, not the fact that their feelings are a problem. The more we get that practice, it's just another way to practice identifying the feelings and needs. And also it gives us a chance to do some repair work to make sure that they're not having any, they're not making any meaning out of you not being able to respond in that moment, because we want them to feel like their emotions are valid even when they're intense. And over time, hopefully your capacity to be with them with their intense feelings will shift, whether that means that whoever in your household is not sleeping very well, so that's impacting on your emotional state during the day, or maybe if it's an emotional issue for you, hopefully over time you'll be able to address that, right? Now, please do not take that to mean that you must. There are circumstances where some people just really, it's not something they're going to be able to do, and I'm not intending for you to take away that that's something that you should be able to do when you can't. Just saying that as time changes, if it is a situation where it will improve over time, we want to make sure that they know that it's not that they shouldn't bring their feelings to you. It's just that right now it's not working, right? Okay, so hopefully that's given you some great tips to use if you're in a situation where it's really hard for you to respond to your child's tantrums in the moment. And if you'd like my support in building up these skills, so a couple of things that I'm really great at. One is being able to ask the right questions so that we can figure out what are those underlying needs for your child. So if that's something that is tricky for you to do, I'm really great at helping you to identify that. So it'll either be through asking some questions about what are the patterns in their behavior or the patterns in the things that they talk about. Or I might, if we can't figure it out from there, I might give you some things to try, and then from that we'll be able to tell, okay, this is the need. And then the second thing is I'm absolutely, so, a lot of my content is about strong-willed children. I was a strong-willed child who's turned into a strong-willed adult. One of the ways my strong-willedness comes out is that I am determined to always find a way to be able to reach your parenting goals. So no matter what are the things that are in the way, if gentle parenting just is really hard for you in some way, or there's some way that you're stuck, I can find a way. I can, with whatever circumstances you're dealing with, whatever difficulties are making it hard, I can help you find a way to get those parenting goals happening regardless of what else is going on for you. So if you'd like my help to work through that, or to build up your skills and build up your child's emotional awareness and communication skills so that we can avoid the tantrums before they start, you can book a free call at jodithornton.com/call, which is CALL, and we can just have a chat about what you're trying to achieve and what's made things hard for you, and I can lay out how I would help, and we can get you to those goals regardless of what else is happening. So thank you so much for watching.